To some of you guys, it might look a little bit early to start predicting what the next ban list will be because after all, the no sooner than date is January 13th, 2020, so in a few weeks. However, a few of you probably also know that I have accidentally posted ban list prediction videos not once, not twice, but 3 different times on the same day that the ban list came out. The April ban list, the July ban list, and the October ban list, I did that for all of them by accident, so the only way that I can guarantee a ban list prediction video goes out soon enough so that you guys can watch it and listen to it before the actual ban list comes out is for me to post it really early. So that's what we're doing for today's video. If I had to take a guess about when the ban list will be announced and when it will go in effect, I think they actually will stick pretty close to that January 13th date. So we might see like an announcement the first week of January, maybe a little bit after that. Also, please don't forget that this is a prediction video, not a wish list video. So while I don't necessarily agree with all of these changes that I think Konami might do, these are the ones that I actually think are realistically possible for the next ban list. I will say that whenever it comes to ban lists, I think there's like 2 ways of thinking about them, and a lot of people only think about it one way and forget the other one exists. The way that I feel a lot of people think about the ban list is that they should just hit the top decks without outright killing them, and while I understand where you're coming from, you just want people's investments to be secure for as long as possible, I also feel that sometimes, not very often, but sometimes the format requires a soft reset of sorts, where a ton of cards get banned and a ton of cards get hit. We've seen it in the past with like all these Zodiac cards, the main ones getting banned on one ban list after a few light hits on previous lists. We've seen it happen with Shaddolls and Nekroz, 2 dominant decks for over 6 months. In the case of Shaddolls, it was over a year, and then they both take a lot of ban list hits to become basically unplayable. The fact of the matter is that if this upcoming ban list doesn't completely destroy the current top strategies, it's gonna be a while before something power creeps those decks. We've already seen a lot of the upcoming cards being released, and none of those new archetypes are truly groundbreaking in the face of Orcas and Sky Strikers and Thunder Dragons and Salmon Greats and even more older strategies. So I really think that if Konami wants to build hype for the April 2020 ruling change, as well as just get people excited for 2020 Yu-Gi-Oh!, they're gonna hit stuff really hard. We've had a lot of these decks around for 6 months or 9 months or over a year and a half in the case of Sky Strikers, and I think it's finally time for us to move on from those older decks and have some new strategies in competition. So first up, for Orcas, I think that they're going to ban Babel, and I want to say I'm not even sure if that is enough to restrict Orcas as a strategy, and that sounds crazy, but hear me out. So before people started playing IP Masquerena, before that card even existed, Crescendo was the main card you had to deal with when you went second against an Orcas deck. However, since the release of IP, I mean, Babel is so clearly the right play in almost every single opening combo, and it really is the card that makes Orcas feel the most unfair. Turning all these sort of non-quick effects into quick effects is just absolutely insane. I know it's kind of a meme, but also there's some truth. So right now, if you sit down and play against Orcas, not only do you have to watch them do the full Orcas combo on their own turn, but also because they have the Babel, they can just do that same combo and more during your turn while you're trying to get your own deck going. It is simply way too much to deal with. I don't think those effects actually should be made into quick effects just by a field spell that you can search so easily. So I think Konami will realistically try to ban Babel on this next ban list. What's interesting though, and as I was kind of setting up there, is that Orcas have been able to be a competitive deck before they were even ending on Babel. Sometimes just consistently being able to make Dingirsu Galatea and then having the Crescendo set is really powerful as well. And this sort of begs the question, is banning Babel enough to kill Orcas? Because right now, if you really go through, think about how many different hits Orcas have indirectly or directly caused. It's really insane. We don't even have Nightmare Mermaid anymore and the deck is still kicking. So I think Orcas are very similar to Burning Abyss in that you need to hit like a whole bunch of cards for the deck to not be super overpowering anymore. You could limit things like Galatea and Harpor and Symbol Skeletons. You can make the engine so small, and because you have no Nightmare Mermaid, it might be harder to actually build an Orcas deck, and I think that that might be the direction that Konami goes. You know, ever since Konami semi-limited 3 dangers on one ban list, I actually have a little bit more faith in them to nerf a strategy and nerf multiple cards instead of just hitting one card a lot. And I'm sure more than a few of you guys, maybe it'll even be the top comment, are going to say, oh, you're just salty about Orcas. You just want Orcas dead so you can play your dumb Altergeist deck. And while I understand where your opinion is coming from, really keep in mind just looking at the statistics. Orcas or Orcas variants have taken, at the last 2 YCSs over half of the top 32 spots. That is simply way too much representation for a deck that's allowed to be around for format after format after format after format. Really consider how many cards in Orcas have been hit or banned, and the deck is still so strong. Clearly the archetype, or clearly the actual interactions within that theme, are way too powerful. I'm not trying to say that like the Orcas cards are better than any other Yu-Gi-Oh card ever released, because that's not true, but right now at least there's really nothing to compete with them consistently. I mean, we certainly are seeing rogue decks topping, and Orcas do have some hard counters like Lancier, System Down, but they are simply so resilient and so powerful and so consistent that even with repeatedly taking away what at the time was perceived as the problem card for the Orcas deck, you know, the Mermaid and the Rusty and the Ranked Magic, even after doing that multiple times on multiple ban lists, with so many people going, okay, now Orcas are taken down a notch, they're finally not going to be a tier 1 deck, all that stuff just doesn't matter. The Orcas cards are just so powerful right now relative to the other cards of the format, that until we get something that's like extremely powerful, which really isn't looking to be on the horizon for a while now, it's going to be pretty hard for any new strategy to compete with Orcas unless they're just completely slaughtered on the ban list. Speaking of decks that are super versatile, super powerful, super consistent, let's talk about Sky Strikers. So it's in a weird spot right now because I actually do kind of feel that pure Sky Strikers are perfectly reasonable right now, but as we all know, these Sky Striker cards are not only getting played in Sky Striker decks, those pure strategies. Sky Striker cards right now are showing up all over the place, especially in the already best deck, Orcas, and holy crap, you guys, Sky Striker Orcas just has so many extenders, so many starters. That deck can somehow play a Sky Striker engine and an Orcas engine and still fit in 10 hand traps into the main deck, and it just kind of blows my mind how good that deck is compared to everything else. So what can Konami do to actually fix Sky Strikers or fix the Sky Striker problem? Well, a lot of people have suggested, and I think it's a pretty good suggestion, that Hornet Drones could get banned, and the reason is that pretty much every time you see Sky Strikers splash into another deck like Goki or Dark Warrior or now Orcas, it's because of Engage searching Hornet Drones. Hornet Drones is a huge deal because Hornet Drones by itself is a 1-card link 2 without using your normal summon. You simply Hornet Drones and then use the token for Kagari and add back the Hornet Drones to activate it again. And while that might not seem super overpowered, and it certainly isn't in a vacuum, the problem is that the decks that are using that as sort of a starter engine also have a bunch of other super powerful cards as well as other powerful Sky Striker cards. So yes, that one Hornet Drones being used for a link 2 isn't going to break the game by itself, but the Hornet Drones existing is what's making the Sky Striker engine actually getting splashed into other decks. But I also think for the overall health of the game and the future of the game, the longevity of the game, we really need to hit Engage at this point. Engage has been legal for a year and a half now, and that is insane to me because I really thought this card would get semi-limited after 1, maybe 2 formats, and then after a year it'd probably be limited or banned, and yet it's still at 3 copies per deck after a year and a half. While it's true that Sky Striker Engage is only as good as the cards it searches, which is why a lot of people are saying just ban Hornet Drones, I think the card is just inherently poorly designed. If you compare it to almost any other searcher, they all have hard once per turn effects, even in archetypes where the cards are harder or slower to actually recycle. In the case of Sky Striker Engage, it is obviously not a hard once per turn effect. It benefits you for being deeper into the game and having more spells in your graveyard. Oh, and by the way, you have Kagari and multi-roll ready to recycle it multiple times over the course of just 1 game. Sky Striker Engage is one of the worst design cards that I've ever seen in the past 2 years, and I think that now is finally the time, after what, like 3 reprints that Konami really wanted to push out to the general player base. I think now that we're really detached from those reprints, now that Konami has tried to make Sky Strikers a fair archetype, I think even with all of the new Sky Striker support that is coming out on the horizon, I think it still is finally time to hit Engage, maybe just semi-limit it. I mean, I don't think it's going to make a huge difference, but it's like a small difference, but realistically this card should have been limited or banned a long time ago, and I hope Konami finally steps up heading into 2020 here and says, okay, we've had our fun with Sky Strikers, we know we're giving them more support, but maybe we should just take them out of the metagame, make them a cool rogue strategy instead of having them always at the forefront of competition. The third biggest deck is definitely Salmon Greats, and this is kind of in a weird spot because I feel that Salmon Greats were designed a lot better than like Strikers or Orcas. You know, most of the cards individually are actually pretty fair. even the opening boards that they set up aren't that scary. Where Salmon Greats really shine though is that they have a million effects after turn 1 that they can use repeatedly from the graveyard. But how do you hit Salmon Greats even harder? You limited both Circle and Gazelle, and a lot of players, myself included, thought the deck just would be dead after that. You know, in the OCG I believe that they had 1 Gazelle but 3 Circle and the deck was still fine, but the TCG went one step further and actually just outright limited both Circle and Gazelle on the same ban list. What's crazy though is that the deck has still survived. You know, it's being piloted by some of the best players in the game with tons of tops, so maybe that has something to do with it. But how much more should Konami really hit Salmon Greats? I mean, if they outright kill Orcas and Skyscrapers, maybe Salad becomes like one of the new top strategies. It already is pretty good and able to keep up with the better decks out there, but it certainly does have some consistency issues. I'm not really sure how much Konami is willing to preemptively hit Salad to stop them from taking over the metagame. I don't think Konami, from their perspective, sees the Salmon Great archetype or Salmon Great deck as big of an issue as Skyscrapers or Orcas, which is fine because they absolutely aren't that big of an issue compared to those decks, but I still feel like they would want to hit them just a tiny bit, just the smallest amount to make them a little bit worse against the other strategies. So in my mind, they would be like semi-limiting one random card, you know, semi-limiting Sunlight Wolf, semi-limiting like Spinny, something so minor that almost doesn't matter, but in some cases will come up, and in some cases compared to the other decks will actually make people not want to play Salmon Greats as much, which is what I feel Konami is trying to do. Salmon Greats certainly are not anywhere near the power level of Orcas or Skyscrapers, but they still have been around for a while and they still are pretty darn good. From Konami's perspective, it seems like you'd only want to hit Salmon Greats a little bit just to prevent them from just overtaking the metagame if you completely nerf Orcas and Skyscrapers into the ground. I was really surprised, but a couple videos ago I just sort of offhandedly mentioned that I don't feel Thunder Dragons are very good right now, and a lot of people got really mad and claimed that they're tier 1 and they're way better than I said they were. But when I looked at the statistics of YCS Pasadena and YCS Milan, the two most recent YCSs, it's objectively just looking pretty rough for Thunder Dragon players right now. If you look back at YCS Pasadena, only 2 Thunder Dragon players actually top 32 that event, and then at YCS Milan only 1 made top 32. They're actually topping less than Pendulums right now, but they have been around for a while and they have been a meta deck for a long time. People really don't like playing against Colossus with their rogue strategies, and it's sort of in the same line of thinking as Salmon Greats, at least in this video. If you totally just nerf Orcas and Skyscrapers completely and just take them out of the metagame, you definitely need to keep decks like Salmon Greats and Thunder Dragons and Pendulums in check, because if you take away the 2 best strategies, then whatever was the 3rd, 4th, and 5th best deck are now suddenly going to be a lot stronger. So in that same line of thinking, I do think that Thunder Dragons stick a very, very light limit, or light semi-limit. I think the OCG hit Colossus and Hawk at one point. I don't think that's totally outlandish for the TCG, and even if Thunder doesn't get hit on this upcoming ban list that'll happen in a couple weeks hopefully, I still think that they need to be hit absolutely 100% before Master Rule 5. There probably will be this next ban list, then one more ban list before Master Rule 5 comes out, and I think it's pretty likely on one of those 2 lists that Thunder will get hit in some way, shape, or form. Hopefully this explained my position more than I made a few videos ago. For any of you guys that were confused, Thunder Dragons right now just aren't topping that much, so I do sort of put them in not a tier 1 category for this format. So what I was trying to talk about in that older video, 10 decks buffed by Master Rule 5, was that Thunder Dragons, they're not very good right now. I mean, objectively they just aren't topping that much, but with Master Rule 5 they'll become a lot better, so hopefully by then Konami actually hits them on one of these 2 ban lists. Of course, whenever I do these videos I always get a few comments from people that say, well, hold on a second, why aren't you talking about back row decks or whatever deck I'm playing at that time? So here's the thing with back row decks. I think it's fine if they hit cards like Their Chameleon 1 or Summon Limit or other Floodgates. Floodgates are super annoying and really uninteractive to play against. However, regular trap cards seem fine, especially considering Lightning Storm is about to come out in just a few weeks here, hopefully a few weeks after the ban list comes out. So I think that back row decks are already going to be having a pretty tough time. There's like 1,000 different ways to deal with back row. So if they want to hit back row decks on the next ban list, which I already am pretty iffy about, I think they probably won't. Back row decks are in a terrible spot right now, especially with Lightning Storm coming out. I think the cards that they would want to hit would be Summon Limit or There Can Be Only One or other Floodgates, not the archetypes that play them. I like to end these videos on a note of some cards that I feel could come off the ban list, and actually a few of the ones that I've asked for, like Construct, actually now are at 3 copies per deck, which is pretty exciting. So the first card that I think can come off, and I've been saying this for a while, is Tribe Infecting Virus. Pretty much no one would play this card. Maybe it's scary in Mermails, but Mermails aren't even that good right now, and this card's only good going second. There's like 1,000 other things you'd rather have going second, even in Mermails. Things like Dark Ruler No More and Super Polymerization are just so incredibly powerful going second that I really can't picture anyone playing Tribe Infecting Virus. I know people are sort of afraid because it's a non-once per turn effect that can just infinitely discard things as long as there's monsters on the board, but I'm truly not really scared of Tribe coming back. I don't think it would be played in hardly anything. I think it's finally time for this card to come off the ban list. I also think Time Seal could go to 3 copies and basically no one would play it. The card doesn't do anything for 4 turns after you draw it because it does nothing when you draw it or that entire turn. It does nothing on your opponent's first turn after you activate it. It does nothing on your next turn because nothing's happened yet. It doesn't actually work or make any impact until 4 turns after you draw it on your opponent's second turn there, and holy crap, that is just way too slow. So even the trap decks probably would not play Time Seal. I think the only reason the card is on the ban list right now or for the past couple years is because Konami just doesn't want to have cards in the game that give you the chance to restrict your opponent from drawing for turn, but man, this card is really bad, so I think I'd probably come back to 3 copies and make no impact on the meta. Anyway though, hope you guys enjoyed today's ban list prediction video. I really like a lot of my choices here. I know some of them were sort of up in the air in terms of, oh, do you semi-limit this random card or this random card or none of the cards, but I really think that in general, Konami is just trying to take down like the 4 top archetypes. You know, you have Sky Strikers and Orcas and Salmon Greats and Thunder Dragons. I think all 4 of those decks are probably going to get hit on this ban list if Konami really wants people to get excited about 2020 Yu-Gi-Oh! Can't wait until April though. That's really when a lot is going to change. So this ban list is going to be pretty big in my opinion, but we'll have to wait and see just how much of an impact Konami is willing to make on these top strategies. I'll see you later though. Thanks so much for watching. Goodbye.